Sandra Bullock is one of the most beloved actresses in Hollywood. Known for her charm, talent, and approachable personality, she built a career that made her both a box office powerhouse and an Academy Award-winning actress. To the outside world, she seemed untouchable, living the dream that millions could only imagine. But behind the glamorous red carpets and blockbuster movies, Sandra Bullock faced something terrifyingly real. In June of 2014, she became the victim of a chilling home invasion by a stalker who had been obsessing over her for months. It wasn't just an attempted burglary. It was the moment Sandra Bullock came face to face with a stranger inside her sanctuary, her safe place, her home. What unfolded that night reads like a horror movie script. A deranged fan lurking in the shadows, a Hollywood star barricading herself in a room, whispers of danger that never really went away. This wasn't a film. This was Sandra Bullock's reality. And the story of her stalker reveals the dark truth about celebrity life, the dangers of obsession, and how even the biggest stars can find themselves utterly vulnerable when the spotlight fades. By 2014, Sandra Bullock had reached an extraordinary peak in her career. Just a few years earlier, she had won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in The Blind Side. She had starred in the hit comedy The Proposal, and more recently, she'd blown audiences away in Alfonso Cuarón's space thriller Gravity, which grossed over $700 million worldwide. She was Hollywood royalty, yet her appeal came from her down-to-earth persona. Fans saw her not just as a star, but as someone relatable, kind, funny, and genuine. But with fame often comes an unwanted shadow. For Sandra, that shadow would take the form of a man whose obsession would bring terror directly to her doorstep. It was June 8, 2014. Sandra Bullock returned to her Los Angeles home after attending the Spike TV Guys' Choice Awards. She had accepted a Decade of Hotness award, and on stage she was all smiles, graceful and witty as always. Later that night, she settled into her Brentwood mansion, a sprawling property tucked away behind gates and security systems. But even with those layers of protection, danger was closer than she realized. Around 1 a.m., Sandra heard noises inside her home. At first, she thought it might be nothing, maybe the house settling, maybe a pet. But then came louder sounds. Footsteps. The unmistakable presence of someone who shouldn't be there. Sandra's instincts kicked in. Heart pounding, she grabbed her phone and locked herself inside a bedroom closet. From there, she dialed 911. On the call, her voice was calm but trembling. She whispered details to the dispatcher. A man was inside her home. She didn't know who he was, and she was terrified. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a scene where she could yell cut. Sandra Bullock was living through her worst nightmare, alone, vulnerable, and trapped with a stranger in her home. The man inside Sandra Bullock's home was later identified as Joshua James Corbett, a 39-year-old obsessed fan. Corbett had been stalking Sandra for some time. Police would later discover he kept a diary filled with disturbing entries about her. In one passage, he called her his wife and wrote about their supposed life together. He also had multiple photos of her and had been plotting ways to get close to her. But Corbett's obsession wasn't limited to harmless fantasies. When police arrested him, they found he had broken into her home armed not with a weapon, but with determination. More disturbing still, when his home was searched, authorities discovered a cache of weapons, illegal firearms and ammunition, that suggested he was capable of something much darker. Sandra didn't know any of this in the moment. All she knew was that a stranger had invaded her most personal space, and she was powerless to stop him. The 911 call made by Sandra that night would later surface during legal proceedings, and it sent chills down the spines of anyone who heard it. Sandra's voice is quiet but urgent as she tells the operator, "I'm in my closet. I have locked the door. I heard footsteps. I think he's inside." Throughout the call, she remains composed, a testament to her strength under unimaginable fear. But the tremble in her tone reveals the truth. She was terrified. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the scene. They found Corbett still inside the property, dressed in dark clothing, carrying no obvious weapon but clearly uninvited. He was taken into custody without incident. For Sandra, though, the damage was already done. The illusion of safety in her own home had been shattered forever. When details of the incident became public, fans and the media were stunned. Sandra Bullock, America's sweetheart, one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, had been stalked and confronted in her own home. As investigators pieced together Corbett's background, the picture grew even more disturbing. His diary revealed that he believed he was married to Sandra, that he communicated with her telepathically, and that their lives were intertwined. Prosecutors charged him with stalking and burglary. Later, when the weapons cache was discovered at his home, additional charges were filed. Sandra herself had to testify in court, recounting the terrifying details of that night. She described how she had woken up to strange noises, how she had hidden in her closet, how the fear had overwhelmed her as she realized she was not alone. It was a nightmare replayed not in her imagination, but in a courtroom, with her stalker seated just feet away. Sandra Bullock's case is far from unique. Hollywood has long been plagued by stalkers who blur the line between admiration and obsession. Stars like Selena Gomez, Taylor Swift, and Halle Berry have all faced stalkers who attempted to break into their homes. In some cases, the encounters ended violently. Actress Rebecca Schaeffer was tragically murdered in 1989 by an obsessed fan who tracked her to her apartment. That killing led to significant changes in anti-stalking laws across the United States. Sandra's case was a chilling reminder that fame doesn't protect celebrities from danger, it makes them targets. To the obsessed, fame isn't a barrier. It's an invitation. Joshua Corbett never stood trial for attempted violence, but his life spiraled after his arrest. In 2017, he accepted a plea deal, pleading no contest to stalking and burglary. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation and ordered to seek treatment for mental health issues. But the story didn't end there. In 2018, Corbett was due back in court for violating the terms of his probation. When police arrived at his home to arrest him, he barricaded himself inside. What followed was a tense standoff lasting hours. Eventually, Corbett took his own life with a self-inflicted wound. His death closed one chapter of the story but left lingering questions. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Could Sandra Bullock's terror have escalated into something far worse if police hadn't intervened in time? Sandra rarely speaks publicly about the incident, but the few times she has, it's clear how deeply it affected her. She has admitted that night left her traumatized, forcing her to rethink her sense of security and privacy. Imagine living in a sprawling mansion with gates, alarms, and cameras, yet realizing none of it stopped a man from walking into your home. For someone as high-profile as Sandra Bullock, it was a brutal reminder that fame comes with a cost. But rather than retreat from the world, Sandra has continued her career with resilience. She has starred in major films like Ocean's 8 and Bird Box, and she remains one of Hollywood's most respected actresses. Still, the shadow of that night lingers in her story, a reminder of how thin the line is between admiration and obsession. The stalker who terrorized Sandra Bullock in her own home didn't just break into a house. He shattered the illusion of safety for one of the world's most beloved actresses. It was a chilling reminder that fame attracts not only adoration but danger, that obsession can tip into violence, and that no amount of wealth or security can make someone untouchable. Sandra Bullock survived her nightmare. She lived to tell the story. But the scars remain, both for her and for the countless other celebrities who live with the knowledge that the next fan they meet might not just want an autograph, they might want something far more sinister. Sandra Bullock's terrifying encounter was not a movie. It was real life. And sometimes, real life is the scariest story of all.